Hello and welcome to this week's episode of the our LinkedIn Facebook Live. We're going to be chatting today with Ros Hobley, and we're going to be talking all about how you can harness your superpowers by developing some great self-awareness. So today we're live on Facebook and on LinkedIn. I'm chatting with Ros Hobley, who is a coach with a company called Giant. We're going to be talking all about how you can develop self-awareness to harness your superpowers. Thank you so much, Ros, for joining me today. It's such a pleasure to chat with you. As people are logging on, if they can let us know if they can hear us all okay, give us a like or an emoji. That would be fab. I'm really excited to chat with you.
Me too.
It's so exciting. Ros and I actually we know each other through the school, and when she
We
said she'd
do.
set up as a coach, I was like fascinated with what she was doing. I thought, oh, definitely got to get her on a live to chat a bit about what she's been doing.
Yeah, absolutely.
So before we dive in to the topic today, do you want to give people a little bit of background as to you and how you've come into coaching?
Yeah, I'd love to. So I'm a mum of two girls. I spent the first 20 years of my career in PR, communications, and then running and the ambassador relations team at an amazing charity called Malaria No More, where I was fortunate to work with kind of world leaders and celebrities, recruiting them to fight malaria and then equipping them with opportunities to raise awareness, raise money, and basically help end one of the world's biggest preventable, treatable diseases. Absolutely loved that. And then I got to the point, which I think a lot of people do after 20 years in an industry, where I was thinking, is this going to be right for this next stage of my life? And I thought about it, I reflected, and I was really interested. Could I use my skills of loving people and seeing a future for people and encouraging them? Could I use those skills in a different way? And I was very fortunate to have a meeting with Steve Cockram, who is a world-class coach and personality guru who co-founded Giant, a global leadership company. Met with him about 18 months ago, had an amazing meeting, and he said, look, I'm putting on a special kind of training course for some people who are going to be part of my team in the future. And yeah, I thought, and I was like, yes, with every fiber of my being, I want to give this a go. And that was 18 months ago now. So I've been training and practicing. I've got some of my first real clients, which is awesome. And yeah, really excited to be here, Liz, and share a bit with you today.
I'm really excited. So did you have a deep sort of sense of self-awareness, I guess, before you went on your journey?
I thought I did. I thought I've learned so much about myself. And I think you and I are this similar personality type. So some of the bits that I say today may also resonate with you, Liz. I thought I knew myself, but now I understand why I react in some ways, why I have the tendencies that I do. And I'm able to put some strategies in place. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
So I know that I've got some questions and I've written some down. We're going to dive into this. So, but I guess really before we sort of dive into it, why is it so important to have a sense of self-awareness? Because you sort of said that you thought you knew who you were, and now maybe you didn't quite know who you were or why you reacted
Mm,
in a way the way
mm,
you did. So
mm.
why should we know exactly who we are? And
Well, I'm going to give quite a big statement, but I really believe in it, which is that self-awareness is actually the foundation for influence. Influence personally, influence professionally with those closest to us. And when we know ourselves and our tendencies, what we're like at our best, and also what we're like when the chips are down, when life's really hard and we're under pressure, when we know what we're like and we understand why, we can put in place some really simple tools, some actions, we can apply some insights, and we can, in bringing in that personal understanding, we have more control and more influence and can make more of a positive impact. And so I think influence is actually the foundation for good relationships, be that a marriage, teamwork, parent and children. So understanding yourself and the influence that you have and looking to be intentional about maximizing what you're brilliant at is a no regrets move that will unlock your potential.
love that. Because I think, I think we often are quite influenced though by others.
Oh, yeah.
And it's quite hard, I think, to know yourself and to know what's important to you and what makes you tick, because you look at your friends, you look at society, you look at, and there's quite, we all have this, don't we, expectation that we should be doing something at this point in our life, we should be behaving in a certain way. And yeah, it sort of probably suppose takes quite a sort of strong sense of character to know who you are, and maybe sometimes go against the grain and go against those expectations.
Yeah, yeah. I hear what you're saying. I think the five voices which we'll be talking about today perhaps gives more of a foundation to that, because I think at a deep level it's about accepting yourself and
Yeah.
knowing yourself, and we all have incredible strengths to bring to this world, to our teams, to our families. And as you said, it can be so easy to get distracted, but actually let's look at what we can control and control the controllables. And so much of that starts with ourselves and our circles of influence. And the first person to start with is you and with I, because we are the only ones who can change our worlds and our perspectives and influence those closest to us. Nobody else can do that. And so I invite, when we have those thoughts, which we all do, but I invite you to kind of be intentional about putting them to one side and not to get distracted, and remember that you do have the opportunity to grow your influence and to make a difference.
Really good. I guess as well, it's a useful thing for employers and managers to do, because when you have like these 360 reviews at work and they sort of say to you, oh, you're quite, you're good at this, but you're not so good at this, and this could be an area that you improve. But actually, if you have that self-awareness and you think, no, this is the type of personality I am, this is how I work best, then I suppose you can push back at that. But then again, it's sort of like from a management perspective, what do you think of those sort of 360 reviews where managers are looking, doing those reviews with people and sort of saying your weaknesses are here, and maybe that is a weak, maybe it is a perceived weakness, but
Yeah. Well, the five voices system, which I'll talk about, has been brought in to kind of complement that and to help people understand their innate strengths and the areas that they need to work on. But in theory, I think 360 feedback is good, but the devil's in the details. It's all about how it's done, how it's presented. And also, I always think it's a great idea for people to do their own review and then to bring the two together and to see whether the areas that you think are your kind of development points match up with what your colleagues think. But interestingly, teams tend to function at 57% of their actual potential. And that's because, generally speaking, in teams, not all voices are heard. People don't feel confident to speak up. Perhaps when they do speak, if they're internal processors, they may not always say what they think first time round. They need the support of the team to tease it out. So a system like the five voices gives you a framework to listen, to understand, and to support one another.
so you think, it's something we should all do as individuals, but I suppose something managers can get their teams to do as well, and then they would be able to
Absolutely.
understand what their team was like and what made their team tick.
Yeah. So the five voices has been created for individuals and for families and for teams to help you understand your strengths, your tendencies. And then there's a lot of what we call applied learning throughout. So once you know which is your voice, so there are five voices, and once you know your voice order, you've then got kind of 10 to 12 potential action points. And it's quite likely that many will resonate with you personally, professionally, and you can take these and be like, right, communication, relationships, or perhaps being defensive or avoiding conflict. These are tendencies that I've got and that I'm going to work on. So yeah, I'd love to talk you through.
Absolutely. Yeah. Thank you.
Okay, amazing. So the five voices personality system, it's used in over 100 countries around the world. It was created to help people understand themselves better, to step into their strengths. And when you go through this, you will have better self-awareness, your trust in your team or in a family context will be increased. There'll also be more understanding and the opportunity to communicate more effectively. And communication and relationships are the foundations of a high-performing team, or indeed family. And I think many of us are part of both of those. So yes. And there are probably a couple of caveats which I'd throw in at the start. So think of this, probably the next 15 minutes, as a mini five voices boot camp. So I will present all of the five voices. We'll have maybe 2 to 3 minutes on each one. Love to get any feedback from our listeners, feedback from you, dear Liz. I will unpack the characteristics of each voice, the strengths, and give a top parenting tip, because I know that a lot of people here are kind of working parents, especially working mums. And this is literally just the very, very top highlights. There's so much more depth and nuance available. So if you're interested afterwards, I've got a link where you can do the assessment. It's free, it's a gift to you. And then from that, there is a wealth of content and video content about you and your personality type, and the opportunity to learn more about different areas where you might have challenges and how to overcome them.
Okay, brilliant.
How does that sound?
I'm really excited. Yeah, because I did mine before, but it's interesting. Also, it's so interesting. You listen to things and you think, oh, I know somebody that's like that. I know someone that's like that. So,
Yeah, exactly. Okay,
Gemma
brilliant.
said that she's done some work on the 5 voices previously, and it's fab.
Oh, good. That's
Yeah,
so encouraging to hear that. Thank you. So everyone in the world will have a voice order with their 5 voices. We will all be able to access all 5 voices, but a few of them will come much more naturally to us than others. So some of the voices will be natural and others will be learned behaviors. The 5 voices is a system to understand and to communicate. So I'm really keen that people don't feel, oh, I'm being put in a box, a certain type, because I think Emily, Liz, actually, you and I, we're the same voice order, but we're also very different people because our behavior is affected by nature, by nurture, and by choice. And so even though our wiring is the same, Liz, we're not the same people, even though we've got similar voice orders, if that makes sense.
Yeah, interesting.
So 5 voices. I'm going to kick off with the nurturer voice. So I'm going to give you some characteristics of the nurturer voice and some examples of famous people. So the superpowers, the real strengths of the nurturer voice are relational harmony, people, and values.
Okay.
Famous examples of people who were nurturers were our late Queen Elizabeth, Mother Teresa, and Nelson Mandela. They all had the nurturer voice as their foundational voice, their first one. Nurturers are ultimate team players. We could think of a nurturer as the relational oil in a team or a family or a community. And if you think about what happens to a car when it doesn't have the oil, things crunch, it doesn't work, you might have an accident, it doesn't get from A to B. And that's what nurturers bring to a team. They make sure that there is a flow in the team, that people feel heard, that they feel understood. Nurturers intuitively know how people are going to react to a proposal, an idea, a change, they're just brilliantly sensitive to the emotional forces within the community in which they operate. And that's such a powerful kind of superpower to be able to bring to any situation. They are pragmatic realists. So nurturers are very concrete, they're very present orientated. They love to win as a team. They really enjoy celebrating others. And so nurturers are very selfless people. I've got a couple of friends who are nurturers, and they're just wonderful people. One of them picks really thoughtful presents. She remembers when I've got a big meeting or a moment, she'll be the one to be in touch. They really care about the detail of life. And they're really happy to kind of be helping make everything happen behind the scenes. So my other friend, who's a nurturer at our school, she'll be the one who gets up in the rain, goes to sports day, sets everything up before everyone else is there. It's that kind of person that just thankfully, keep our communities running, our families running. They really do bring the kind of oil and the relational substance to help make everything happen. But a key point to note about nurturers is that they rarely value the contribution that they bring. They are absolutely amazing operators. They're highly professional, but they need affirmation and encouragement, not only of what they do, but who they are. And so if you're married to a nurturer or you have a nurturer in your team, never hesitate. to just shower them with praise and remind them how great they are, because there's no such thing as an arrogant nurturer. Yeah, that's quite
Lydia, that's nice, because Lydia says she's a nurturer.
yes,
Well, that's a lovely one.
yeah,
Obviously, so helpful to understand herself and tendencies, and she's
yeah.
grateful to have this level and depth of understanding.
Great, that's so encouraging to hear, and I think it helps you understand why affirmation is so important. Different voice types don't need the words of affirmation, but to a nurturer, that's really important. Statistically speaking, nurturers make up 43% of our world's population, which I think is such a good thing.
That's really high, actually.
Really high. They are the voice who take up the biggest population. And traditionally speaking, 70% of nurturers are women. So again, that's interesting. From a parenting point of view, nurturers are the voice who are absolutely brilliant at going into the worlds of their children, at being present with their children, anticipating and knowing their feelings, knowing their relationships, knowing every detail that they'll need for their birthday party. So if you've got a parent who's a nurturer, then you are a fortunate person.
Yes. Oh, do you know, I'm thinking of somebody that I know that's
Are
definitely a
you?
nurturer. Yeah, and she does, like you said, she does do lovely gifts and
Yeah.
really thoughtful. And I always think, oh, she's really nice. They're nice people, aren't they? And they're definitely good people to have around.
Really good people, but yeah, they don't seek the limelight though, whereas others of the voices do need public affirmation. But the nurturer, just from those closest to them, having the affirmation for who they are is it's a really important point.
Yeah. Oh,
shall I move on to the second voice?
yeah,
Brilliant.
please.
So the second voice is called the creative voice, and the superpower of the creative is innovative thinking and seeing a world that doesn't yet exist. So famous examples of creative voices are Marie Curie, Steve Jobs, and Bill Gates. All people who have changed the trajectory of our world in terms of innovation and bringing in thinking and changes which have made our world arguably a much better place. You could think of a creative as a little bit like a meerkat. So somebody who's going out of their comfort zone and looking at the horizon and anticipating risks, opportunities, seeing what's coming down the line, having a really good look at the world around them and seeing where they fit into that and what are the changes that we need to anticipate. Creatives are the people who have the genuine potential to game change your team, the trajectory of your organization, because they will see new opportunities and risks before anybody else does. They are future-orientated people. They're curious, they're comfortable with change, and they tend to be idealists and perfectionists. And when they have an idea in their head or they see what something could be, they are so committed to making it happen. So if you tell them that it can't be done, that won't go down well, because they will be so passionate about this idea where they see how they can change the world and bring in a new type of thinking. In my former role at charity Malaria No More, I was grateful to work with a number of kind of leaders, including David Beckham. And we were coming up with an idea to engage him, a film idea. And it was working with the creatives on my team who helped. We made a video which was a world first. So using new AI technology, when David spoke 8 languages, one straight after the other, all to fight malaria. And it was super cool, had never been done before. And it was that creative thinking that really pushed the innovation, the originality. And so creatives are the ones, if you have a creative on your team, they are a gift. Because you could say, Liz, what are the things I should be worrying about or coming down the line in my industry 1, 3, 5 years from time? And that's like oxygen to a creative soul, because they will love going out and looking at the trends, anticipating the future, and then feeding that back to you.
Do you know who I'm thinking of? Elon Musk.
Yes.
Elon Musk.
Yes. Yeah.
Sorry, go on. What were you going to say? Sorry.
I think Elon Musk is a pioneer creative. So your first,
different?
second, and third voices are really important. I'm just looking at the first voice right now, but you're absolutely right. Elon is a future-orientated, future thinker, innovative. very, very much so.
Is there how many? I'm sure you're going to get to this because you sort of said there was a lot of nurturers in the world.
Yeah.
How many creatives are there?
Just 9% of the population,
Yeah.
so just under 1 in 10. They are the second most rare type of voice, but they will bring a level of innovative thinking that nobody else will. So yeah, they're absolutely brilliant to have around.
They have to be quite brave, I guess, as well, to put their hand up and suggest something, knowing especially if it's never been done before.
Yeah,
Don't know if it's going to work. And
yeah, absolutely. And I guess that's where the leadership of a team's quite important, because there's a big study done, and high performing teams and are ones where people feel safe and there's psychological trust. So safe to make mistakes, safe to do something, not to work out. So if you're managing a creative, please make sure that they know it's okay to make mistakes and it's okay to get things wrong. Because if they don't feel that security, then you're absolutely right. They won't have the they won't feel empowered to be able to do that in that way.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. From a parenting point of view, a kind of growth point is, if you're a creative first voice parent, you are very likely to see enormous potential for your children, and it's likely that you might have kind of perfectionist tendencies. So creative parents will need to work quite hard to accept their children as they are, and sometimes good is good enough, and for your perhaps personality of your child, good will be great. But creatives will always have that tendency to want to push their children to be the very best they can be. So it's just, which can be a good thing, or it's not always appropriate.
Yes. We've had a question, but maybe we could ask some questions at the end.
Okay, brilliant.
Right. Yeah, because I think that'll really complement what you're talking about.
Okay, brilliant. So we've got 3 more voices, so we'll whistle through, do a couple of minutes on each. So the third voice is the guardian voice, and the superpowers of a guardian: effective resources, systems and processes. They are absolutely brilliant at resource management. They're logical, rational, reasoned leaders. Famous examples of guardians are Camilla Harris, Angela Merkel and Bear Grylls. They are all really good at making sure you do your due diligence when you're looking at a project. Has all of the detail been thought through? They'll make sure that you've dotted all the I's, crossed all the T's. If you want a project delivered on time, give it to a guardian. But get ready, Liz, because they will have a relentless amount of questions to throw at you. They will want to make sure that they've got,
I worked with a lot of guardians, I think.
All those difficult questions, that is a guardian, because they have to make sure that they've got the information that they need. Guardians love to critique. They critique for fun, and they have the ability to detach themselves from situations. So a growth point for a guardian might be around tone and tact and sensitivity, especially if they're working in a team where people are under pressure and they've detached themselves a little bit. Guardians are present orientated. They're absolutely brilliant at problem solving in the moment. My former COO at Malaria No More was a guardian, and we put on a global summit with world leaders, royalty. It was amazing, but a massive headache. And he oversaw all the logistics, all the detail, and it would have killed most of us. But that really played into his superpower to organize and to be systematic. From a parenting point of view, growth area for guardians will be that sensitivity piece, especially when you've got a sensitive child, and to be willing to do activities which aren't going to achieve anything. Waste time with your kids, go and build a mud pie or something. But that can be interesting.
They're quite outcome focused.
Yes, exactly, Liz. And guardians represent 30% of the world's population. So they're the second largest voice in terms of the world's population. And traditionally speaking, 70% of these are men.
I think my husband, he's quite good. He's very into the detail and I'm not actually. So that probably does compliment you.
That's a good compliment. Yes. Yeah, exactly. Right, fourth voice. This is the connector voice, which is, I think, what you are, dear Liz. So the superpowers of a connector are building relationships, maintaining networks, and inspiring interest and action. Well-known people who are connectors are Oprah Winfrey, Bono, and the late, great Maya Angelou.
Oh, I mean,
Connectors,
good company.
you are in very good company, Liz. Well, they are persuasive, compelling communicators. They have the real ability to inspire people to get involved in causes or activities that they believe in. Connectors, by the nature of their name, are able to maintain a large number of relationships. So 100 to 200 people isn't uncommon. And they're really good at taking complex problems and positioning them and communicating them in a way that's going to resonate and land with people. Connectors are future orientated and they're highly relational. So they're really good at seeing growth for a person, future growth of a team, of a company. Growing people and teams is a real kind of lifeline for a connector. They're very resourceful. So if a supplier was to let you down, Liz, being a connector, let's say I had pulled out of today, which I'd never ever do, but had I been ill, I imagine being a connector, you might have had, perhaps a couple of other people who you could have pulled on at the last minute. And connectors often are very resourceful. And it could just be someone that you met in a cafe last week, but because you're so good at building relationships from scratch, connectors can kind of build up their contacts very easily. We aren't people pleasers, and we tend to take things very deeply. So this means that connectors can often avoid conflict and take feedback very personally. So that's a growth
That
point.
is true. Yeah.
Is it? So,
Yeah, it is. I don't.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'd get quite upset at getting criticism, which shouldn't really. Well,
Me
it's hard,
too.
isn't it? It's hard to
It is.
separate it.
Yeah, it is hard. Yeah. Connectors lead interrelated lives where their work, their family, everything kind of merges in, which is a strength. But then when something doesn't go right, it's hard to detach yourself from that. From a parenting point of view, one area for growth might be for a connector to learn to be more patient, especially if their child is a guardian and has lots of questions and is asking why all the time. Sometimes I found this, that I really have to learn to be patient and present.
Yes.
So yeah.
Oh my gosh, that is like really me. I was like, yeah, that
Is
is
it?
me.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
I
Oh,
think that
well,
you're right about everything interconnecting, because if I've
yeah,
had it all bleeds into the emotions, all bleed into each other. And I think that is
they
a really good
do.
point.
They do.
Yeah.
So 11% of our population are connectors. So I think
That's not that
there's
many.
not that many, just over 1 in 10. I'm
Yeah.
conscious of time, so we're going to dive into the last one, and then I'd love to take any questions.
Yeah,
So
we've got a couple.
okay, brilliant. So the fifth voice is the pioneer voice. And the superpower of the pioneer is strategic vision, delivering results, and problem solving. And famous examples of pioneers are Greta Thunberg, Elon
Okay.
Musk, who we mentioned earlier, and
Yeah.
Steve Jobs. And pioneers are outstanding strategic thinkers who love to win. You might remember nurturers like to win as a team. Pioneers love to win as a team, but they also love to win by themselves. Winning and competency is a huge driver for a pioneer. They will approach life with an anything is possible attitude. If you say to a pioneer you can't do that, they're like, right, let me prove you wrong. I will do it.
Yeah. So they're very similar to the other. I've forgotten what the other one was called.
Guardians or creatives.
Yeah, creators.
Yeah. Pioneers love to be the best, and they love to surround themselves by people who are outstanding in their field. They have great military thinking, so they're really good at aligning systems, resources, and people. So you can see why Steve Jobs was a pioneer, because he created a product, then it went national, then it went international, then it went global, and Apple is one of the most recognizable, successful brands in the world. And that's a pioneer thinking and building and shaping that. My former CEO was a pioneer. And when we put on this malaria summit, people said, it's going to be tricky, haven't got the time, we don't have the resources. And he really was the driving force for making it happen. And we raised £4 billion to fight malaria. And it was amazing. But that was him. Pioneers would rather die trying than give up.
Okay, yeah.
They make up just 7% of the population. But it can feel like there are more pioneers in the world because they often take leadership positions. It's not uncommon for pioneers to be leaders, CEOs, executive directors. And as parents, pioneers need to work the hardest to go into the worlds of their children, because often they're used to being successful and having a lot of positional power. They're used to people coming into their worlds and joining them in their sport or their love for fashion or culture or whatever it is. But a pioneer needs to be ready to let go what they're interested in and really go into what their children are interested in, even if that's not where they are. That makes sense.
That makes sense. Wow.
So that was a real whistle stop tour, and there's so much more that I could say on each. So I'll stop
Do
there.
you need, for successful teams, do you think you need one of each voice?
Yeah, ideally in a team that is size 7 or 8 or more, yes. And one of the things that we do is we have decision-making filters for each voice. So let's say you're in a team where you're missing a pioneer. You can be like, right, this is what a pioneer would be asking. These are the questions. Can we make sure we've thought that through? So you've got that covered, because yes, ideally, each voice brings different strengths, different characteristics. So a high-functioning team would need all.
So that's quite a good sort of point really for a recruiter or a hiring manager, in that when you're thinking about teams, it's making sure actually, we talk about diverse teams, and obviously, and when we talk about that, we might be thinking about certain characteristics, but actually maybe this is as important as well, in making sure you've got all the different personality types and those voices represented.
But interestingly, so I'm a connector, creative, nurturer, same as you, Liz. But if there wasn't a creative in the team, you or I could probably access that quite easily, because we are future oriented. So it's also interesting to look at the second and third voices that people have, because a lot of those characteristics or behaviors, whether that's under stress or the triggers for people, those which are relevant to each voice, different ones will be pulled out. So the first, second, and third voices are the ones that you want to pay attention to.
And can people use the testing as part of a recruitment process then?
Yeah, absolutely. So I've got a little link which I think you're kindly going to share.
Yeah, I will share.
Brilliant. So that will give people access to a free assessment, do 80 questions. It's 80% accurate, and you will then have your voice order, and you'll have a free account with Giant. And at that point, you get access to 16 Netflix style videos between 5 to 10 minutes each, all about your specific voice order and your personality type. So what you bring at your best, how to resolve conflict, how you undermine your influence, how to build your influence, what you think you're great at, but actually you're not that great at, how can you be better at time management, 16 different areas of positive action and self-awareness, and it's completely free. And I would honestly, there's complete gold in there. So I'd really encourage you to do that if you'd like to find out more.
We will. Jane has asked, how do the 5 types fit with 16 Myers-Briggs categories?
Great question, Jane. So it's the same source code. So Steve Cockram, who I mentioned earlier, created the 5 voices using 3 source codes. The biggest one is Myers-Briggs and Carl Jung. And then the third one was William Schutz, who is an American psychologist who looked at control, affection, inclusion, and being able to predict human relationships. But basically, I am an ENFJ in Myers-Briggs speak, which means I am a creative connector, nurturer, pioneer, guardian. So there's quite a bit beneath it. That's a really good question. And they do use the same source codes, so to speak.
Brilliant. And then someone said, can your voice be split across categories or depend on what role you do in your job?
I think the short answer is I don't think so. I think your voice is you and your wiring, and in your role, different parts of it and different strengths will fit into your role, or because of your nurture, because you adapt your external environment, you may try and adapt, understandably, your personality to fit into that role. But I don't think that would change your fundamental foundational voice order.
And I suppose, are we born with a voice, or does it develop depending upon our external environment?
So your behaviors affected by your nature, your nurture, and your choice. Your nature, Liz, was there when you were born. That's in your DNA. So your nurture is how you're affected by the external environments, culture, your sex, the jobs you've had, where you live, all of those kind of things. And then your choice is how you choose to show up on a rainy day when you don't want to go into work, and the attitude that you have there. So your nature will never change. Depending on when you do this assessment, if you're doing it in one role now, it's possible that if you're doing a completely different role and a different stage of life, the results would come out different. But at Giant, with the one-on-one coaching that I do, we focus on a person's nature, and that never changes.
Brilliant. This has been so helpful. So I don't know if anyone's got any final questions for Roz. Feel free to pop them in the comments. And if you've missed any of this, we'll put the replay on the website as well. So where can people in the meantime find you, connect with you? And do you mind giving us the link again where people can do the test,
of course.
the assessment?
Yes, of course. So you can just email me at ros@londongiant.com. And when we post this up, I've got a link, which is https //www.giant.tv/Ros Hobley. But I don't expect you to remember all that.
That's
So
all right. We'll put the
put
link
that up.
in.
Yeah, and I'm on LinkedIn as well.
Brilliant. Well, thank you so much, Roz, for joining us today. And thank you so much for everybody that has watched and asked questions and got involved. It's been an absolute pleasure. And I've loved learning about all, it's been so interesting. So thank you so much for your time.
Absolute pleasure. Thanks for having me, Liz.